Call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. First up in our business, we need to approve our minutes from August 7th.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, first up, Tony, we have our Sugar Creek abatement, tax abatement.
Yes, the tax abatement committee made up of myself and Max and Beth met to take a look at a abatement request from Sugar Creek Packing Company for equipment to be installed through May of 2026. They currently have 592 employees with a payroll of just over 33 million. They would be adding 20 additional employees and payroll of 840,000 to that. I just talked to Ron here beforehand because there are certain things on here that are not public information that they have, and I will pass this down to everybody, and you can see the total investment that they've made in equipment so far and what they're proposing to do. On the back page is a list of that equipment. Ron has prepared resolution number 2024-02 for a 10-year abatement using the schedule that we've always used, the in declines 10% per year each year. So we have Ron Holbrook is here this morning, and he's gonna tell us a little bit about what's going on at Sugar Creek. If you want to come forward to the podium, and while he's doing that, I'll pass that down. If you can pass it back down to me, then.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're grateful for the business we have here in Wayne County, committed to it. The investment proposal and request for tax relief you have before you. The last year or so, we've seen some headwinds in our business, including reduction in some volume, basically just economic factors and inflation, we believe, have caused some of that. The majority of the equipment there that you see and the request for this abatement is for investment to be more competitive. As we are a co-packer and we bid out and do produce products for other manufacturers. So this equipment will make us more efficient, as well as allow us to market to to produce additional products that we currently didn't have, or prior to the investment, did not have capability of producing at the facility in Cambridge City, Indiana. So this equipment will allow us to make products we currently couldn't make there and bring additional business to retain the 592 jobs that are in the application and add the additional 20. So we appreciate you taking that under consideration for us.
Okay, thank you. The recommendation of the tax abatement committee was for the full council to approve it with a 10-year abatement, the standard 100, 90, 80, et cetera, decrease of 10% per year schedule. Are there any questions regarding the abatement?
I have no questions, but we certainly in Western Wayne County, as well as all of the county, appreciate this community support from Sugar Creek. It's fantastic. Many organizations, nonprofits, appreciate the help that you provide on a regular basis, and you've been a great community member. I would move that we approve the resolution that's been presented to enact this tax abatement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Motion passes. We have 3 copies to sign, so I'll be sending those around. Make sure you sign them.
Thank you very much, Ron. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Holscher, you asked to be on the agenda.
At your last meeting, there was a brief discussion of who should pay for, what fund should pay for the health insurance that the county makes available to its employees. And I believe that what I want to do is large enough to come to council and explain and get your blessing for it, because it's something that the auditor's always done or has done in the past by themselves, but I think I'm seeking your blessing on what I want to do. In your budget, there is an appropriation for health insurance. It's a little over, I think, $3 million roughly. And that appropriation is enough and is currently paying all of the health insurance for county employees. I'm not asking for an additional amount of money to be put into the budget. It's already there and we're already paying it. What some of these entities that we're paying for have problems because we have gone back and billed them for the health insurance. And right now, some have already been put under the plan that we pay the health insurance for them. And we don't charge that entity for the health insurance. And I'm recommending that my office pay for everybody's health insurance in the county. And what we're doing now, and not going back and billing each department for that expense. We don't bill each department. Some are not billed. And I think this should be a policy of we just pay it and not bill the department. That allows, because right now, in your budget, it's in there twice. It's in there under the county appropriation, and then it's in there under the departments that we bill. So that amount of money is in there twice. If we go ahead and just say, if I want to pay it all for the entire county, there's about $300,000 of appropriation that we can remove from the other departments. That would also reduce what your maximum is that you can collect and have your budgets for 25. I'll try to answer any questions you have on this.
Just a point of clarification. You're saying other departments, you are intending to say non-general fund, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So how much money are we talking that, you gave a figure maybe, but how much are we talking about that would not be paid by non-general fund entities?
It's around $280,000 a year. But that money is already spent by county general. We've already spent it.
It's reimbursed back to county general, correct?
Some of them are and some not. And what we run into is, because we kind of started doing this a year ago, and some of these grants, some of these entities are shocked by the amount of money we're billing them for, one of which was probation. And I have an employee that worked in there and is very well aware of what we did and how it affected their budget. Pay all of it. that frees up those budgets to do more of what they're supposed to be doing. Like I said, we do this already for some. Up until 3 years ago, the auditor didn't bill each entity. So, in fact, they were told to leave the money in their budgets as a pad or may need it in the future or whatever. And it's still sitting there. So we started billing them and ran into several problems doing that and a lot of resistance. So I just think that if we're gonna pay it for some of these entities, and we need to just pay it, my policy would be just to pay for all of it. What we're doing now, it's already in the 3 million appropriation that's in council's budget for health insurance. We just have started going back and billing each entity to get that reimbursed. And we have problems with it. We get, some of them have talked to us about the impact it has on their budget because it hasn't been done. So I just think it's just, I think I should just go ahead and pay for all of the health insurance and not bill these people back. Again, some of this you have up until 3 years ago, it was just done and nothing was said by the auditor council. I want to express to the council, I think you need to know what I'm doing, and I would like to continue doing that.
Just to kind of explain a little bit what I think Mark is saying, it's not entities and it's not departments. We've got the general fund and we've got folks that are in non-general fund. And what we traditionally have done to help us balance the general fund is to pay the health insurance out of, if there's an employee that's being paid in a non-county general fund, we've paid the health insurance in that non-county general fund. Some of those non-county general funds the amounts are decreasing, and there may be some justification that you would want to move those back to the general fund. But there are other funds that are healthy, that are non-general funds that would have the ability to pay the health insurance from that. So I think what Mark, I think in the past, those other funds have paid. I think this year you have not. You've paid it all from the general fund to date.
We have paid everything that is currently paid from your appropriation. We then go back.
From which?
From your budget of
Council line item.
something for done.
Okay.
That's in there. I'm not asking to increase that appropriation. I'm just saying that we have, and I think Debbie has a list of the funds that we pay the insurance for, and then we bill them back for that payment. And then there are some that we don't bill to have being reimbursed for. My philosophy is.
And what's the rationale for not billing those?
It's always been that way. That's what and some of these things.
I see Debbie saying no.
Well,
It started 3 or 4 years ago.
right.
And prior to that, like I think I shared last time from the probation office when I was working there, we always had a health department line item. And like Josie at the time questioned, why are we doing this and we're not getting billed? And the auditor's office said, keep it as a placeholder. And 3 or 4 years ago, all of a sudden, bam, they started thousands of dollars coming out to the point the probation department's budgets didn't have enough, and it really put them in a bind. When I came on board here, I tried questioning, how did they bill them? Nobody could answer. So Amy and I went back to try to figure out what ones were being charged and how they were being charged. So last year, we started to basically charge each non-county general department that previously had been charged it, and then just reimbursed county general. But like we found out last month, the clerk's office was really hurting, and we know the probation office was really hurting. And I think what Mark's trying to say, it's already in your council budget. We were just reimbursing it, but you've already got it budgeted, and it would greatly help those other departments if they didn't have to have that expense to reimburse you, then they can use it for, like Mark said, the things that that budget is intended for.
I think I would like to see a itemized list of each fund, and what the annual cost to that department, be it under a grant or a non-reverting fund, that you're asking to be paid out of the appropriation. Because right now, we don't have any idea as to
Okay.
what the extent of that would be.
I can give you that. Do you want me to go get it, or do you want?
I don't think that's something that has to be acted on today, is it?
No.
And so if you could just email it to us. I mean, I think it's worth looking at, but we need the information to be able to.
And I don't know why, I do know why, but previous auditors did this. And I feel like council should be aware of what's going on with it. And that's why I'm here today to let you know, and I'll answer any questions you have on it. But it does have an impact on the individual entities that we're billing, because it is not a small amount of money to them. And like Debbie said, she worked in the probation office, and they just started taking this money out and putting it back into the general fund. But
It's really not necessarily a duplication. It is, there's 3 million in the general fund, and then each of the non-general funds has an amount that.
But if I don't bill them.
If you don't bill them, I think our intent is that you bill them, but if there is some concern about a shrinking non-general fund, then council may decide that they want to pay for it through the general fund. But if someone receives a grant and they're hiring another person, oftentimes council will say, well, they need to take care of the health insurance of that person through that grant or non-general fund. So, I think it's right for us to take a look at it. Barry, if Debbie can get us a list of what funds it is, we can take a look at the ability for that non-general fund or grant to pay for the health insurance, and then decide whether we want to have the general fund pay it or that specific fund.
Another aspect of this, we noticed the other day, highway, their health insurance is not coming out of their budget. And Mark was saying, well, if we're gonna do it, then shouldn't it be all of them? I don't know if there's any, off the top of my head, I don't know if there's any others in the highway.
That was a decision that we made, that no, it was gonna be paid out of the general fund.
And there's a very good reason for that. It was to subsidize the expenses of the highway department from income tax dollars that we as a county got. And so that whole philosophy of the highway department started back in the late 80s and continued.
So that's a good reason to extend it to other offices, because that also lets them have additional funds without costing the county any money, and being able to do additional things they need to do. Part of this came from additional staff that was hired, additional rate increases for staff that have been given, and these grants and other entities, their money didn't increase at that same level as what the expenses did. And so, like the highway department, it gives us an opportunity to help them do a better job with what they're supposed to do.
It's a lot like our perpetuation funds. Sometimes we move employees that work in that specific cause in there, and that's to help the general fund. And there's no difference in the health insurance, sometimes, you know, we put the cost in those non-general funds to help the general fund. So it's all a matter of where council wants it, you know, paid out of. Sometimes it's going to be, sometimes there's an ability and a fund will continue to increase, and there are not other things that they can do. And then we make the decision, okay, we're going to pay the health insurance out of that. So, you know, and sometimes their funds are decreasing, and we make the decision at budget time, hey, we're going to move this employee back to the general fund. We're going to move the health insurance back, their health insurance back to the general fund. So, you know, some funds, non-general funds are one way and some are not, but they have been looked at.
Tony, I think Ron has a.
I think, Tony, you made a point that I think I would want to emphasize, and that is sometimes the grants that are funded have a budget themselves that will include those fringes, and I think you want to avoid any unintended consequences of violating the commitments made in the granting process. Now, granted, I'm not sure that how that occurs.
Yeah, because some health department grants, I know that it has to be paid from the grant itself. It can't be.
Or amended the application, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
We have grants, and we have employees in those grants.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the grant, we wouldn't have an employee. I think that grant should pay the insurance for that employee. Should be part of it. We've stressed that a lot of times. When somebody has applied for a grant, we want to know, will that pay the insurance? So the benefits. I feel like.
I think the thing to do is if the auditor's office, Debbie, can give us a list of those, and that the health insurance is coming out of, and give us what the fund balance is in it, then we can make the decision whether we want that fund to continue or whether we need to move it to the general fund. But I think it's worth taking a look at.
I think it's been the long-time philosophy of this group to protect general fund dollars the best we can when there's other sources outside of the property tax dollars. I understand where you're coming from, Mark, but at this point I have trouble agreeing with that. So additional information will be helpful to know the magnitude of what.
Well, that's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
Because I would like to have a discussion of what we should and should not do, and so that I don't have to answer the question of why did you start doing this and when did you start doing it? Because up until about 3 years ago, it was not done this way. So,
Okay, we'll wait for the information that Debbie's gonna put together for us, and then we can discuss it at workshop. Okay? Is that okay with you?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's why I'm here, just to ask how you want. And I understand the philosophy of bidding, or not bidding, but billing them. And I also understand that some of these grants have that in them to make payment
They have.
for. So, in discussing this, I would like to have council direction on how my office should go about paying this bill. I don't think that the auditor should be the only one that makes that decision.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Jeff Plaster for ARPA expenditures.
We have a couple of claims through the sheriff's office that we need to try to clarify where are we going to pay this out of, what approvals have gone before, and what we might need to change, because these ended up being paid out of ARPA funds. It was not an approved expenditure out of ARPA, but the claim came through. One in the amount of $10,000. The other,
What was that one for?
extended warranties for peripherals. And yeah, I've got all the claim documents, but it actually is paid to Motorola.
Okay.
The original bill was $30,432.80. And 10,000 of that was paid out of ARPA. I talked to the sheriff, I don't know, he gets here today. And apparently in the budget process, that line item was underfunded by $10,000 to accommodate this. I honestly don't remember any of the discussion that went into that.
Well, I
that
think it was
budgeting.
actually just a mistake from last year.
But the 10,000, and Sheriff, feel free to offer any additional information that you might have. But the fact of the matter is this was not approved to be paid out of ARPA, as far as I know, by either you or the commissioners. As a consequence, it did not go through Beth Fields to do all of the checks that need to happen when you're spending federal money of any kind. So it needs to make sure that at the time of the contract, the provider is not debarred from receiving funds from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
That did not happen. That if we don't correct this, it will be an audit finding. The other is municipal emergency services, body armor for 10 employees at a total cost of $5,595. Again, both of these are things that could have been paid out of ARPA, but it didn't go through the normal vetting process. And so my suggestion would be that we do a correcting entry and put the money back into ARPA and pay it out from a different source that doesn't have to go through that vetting process.
I think there was conversation at the time as to where we would pay those. The $10,000 was just an error out of the sheriff's 24 budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the 5,500 was the additional body armor. Could we not correct that just by paying it out of council's one time?
Yeah, or council contingency, whichever,
Correct the issue with,
and just make a correct.
Whatever is your pleasure. We just want to make sure that it gets corrected before.
Debbie, do you need paperwork to make a correcting panel? Like what form do you need for that?
I'd have to go back and get it.
Okay, we can handle it. We just need to talk about.
I'll
If
make a
that's what we
motion
wanna
that chair work with the auditor's office and make the journal entry and pay that difference from contingency.
That's fine if that's your.
Doesn't matter to contingency.
It really doesn't make a difference.
It
With-
doesn't matter.
I'm not sure we need a motion even,
Just
if
to,
it's a correction.
well, we have to motion to actually pay those amounts because we hadn't to before, so we should.
Jeff,
Yes,
any expenditure out of ARPA has to go through Beth Fields, right?
correct.
Then why was this paid without going through Beth? There's the question.
Explain it. I've talked to everybody in the loop with that information that because ARPA has special stipulations, it's federal dollars, we need to make sure we follow the process and get all the paperwork done. So I don't think it will happen again, but it did happen twice in the.
It sounds like this whole thing started by
Just a
wrong
miscommunication.
claim by the
Yeah.
sheriff.
What was that amount on the second one? 5,000 what?
5,595.
$15,595.
Correct.
So we have a motion
I'll second it.
and we have a second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. We will take care of that with the auditor's office, okay? All right. I We have commissioners' comments. Steve, do you have some things to tell us today?
Good morning.
Hi.
Yeah, before you, your biweekly updates on the projects. And starting out there at the top, no change from the last time we met on the generator. Technology in this room, we've got it, it's all installed, and the IT department has been tweaking it and sitting in the back of the room this morning listening to you folks talk. It seems to be working a lot better than it did the last time we met. So I think this, with a few more tweaks, this will be coming to a close. The courthouse elevator study, according to the timeline that we had with the LWC, that's be coming to, you should be getting a report. The commissioners will look at this next week, if in fact it's delivered on time, and then we'll be sharing that with you so that you can have some information going forward on that. The Coleman roof and the Coleman Center ceiling and lighting projects, those two, we'll be receiving bids on those on September 11th. Once we get those and some numbers, we'll be coming back to you to share that information. We do have a pre-bid this morning for interested contractors on both those projects. One of the meetings is at 9 this morning, and the other one is at 11. The HVAC and Expo had to take a week off of working on the punch list last week. We had a large event out there. If you were driving by, huge crowd for the coon hunters event. I hadn't even ever seen it quite as large as it was. It was a great event this year.
It was the size of the county fair.
Maybe even a little bigger with some of the cars parked on the west side. So, and then the horse barn roof, that is completed. And want to note to you a couple of the figures on here. So in that column C, the project amount, remember that you had agreed on budgeting $61,000 for that, and that was to come out of the ARPA money. The project ended up costing $56,570, so it come in just a little bit under budget, and the reason for that is because once they got the roof off, they didn't have to replace some of the rafters and purlins that we had planned on. But we remember that we had initially budgeted way back before this ever received bids. We had scheduled to at $135,000. So that's what you had planned for in the ARPA money. So once this project is paid for, you're going to have a leftover in that line of about $78,000. Now, remember, we certainly anticipate then the Coleman roof is going to be more than this. So once we get those numbers, my point is you've got a line item of $165,000 for the Coleman roof and $78,000. So you've got about $240,000 to look at. But we know that there's going to be some additional because we've added the ceiling and lighting project to that. So just so that everybody's up to speed on what those numbers mean to you. And then again, as you talked about your council one-time money, that figure in the lower right-hand corner of just a little over $1 million, that's what you have in that one-time account that's not accounted for. It's not encumbered on anything. So right now, for the projects that I bring to you, you've got committed a little less or a little more than $53,000 out of that $1 million. Any questions? Okay.
It's nice to have a project come in under budget.
Pardon me?
It's nice to have a project come in under budget. We're usually asking for more.
Another project you'll see starting, it'll be on this list coming up, is our
Landscape.
Our security committee will be meeting next week to discuss the Prox card locking system. And once we get that drilled down, we'll come back to you with some figures on that as well.
Steve, did the vendor figure out the technology issue the last meeting that I tried to participate virtually in?
Oh, yeah.
There was a glitch.
Yes. I say
That'll
that.
happened for me again traveling for work, so.
Yes.
Yes, that's a great answer.
Yes, it was
What's the yes
addressed.
for?
Yes, it was fixed. We're not sure what that yes means.
So we've been talking about ARPA expenditures, and here's our report. 4 months to complete all of our required commitments of the ARPA funds. And again, by commitments, it means a contractual commitment, not just an agreement between council and commissioners that we want to spend money on X. We actually have to have a contract for who's going to do the work or where we're going to purchase the equipment from. And then all of that has to be completed by the end of 2026. So on one side of the page, you have the HELP projects. Let's start with those. And we've changed a few things here on your report. So one of the things that you'll notice is the green highlights primarily on the back side of the page, the non-HELP projects, but also in the emergency communications towers highlighted in green. Those are the projects that fall under the original requirements of money from the U.S. Treasury. So they have to be spent on projects that meet all of those guidelines. In the HELP projects, the one that does is the emergency communications towers. So remember, we have approximately $12.78 million total from HELP, or from ARPA, and we took $10 million of that as lost revenue, so that can be spent on pretty much anything. And then the remaining $2.78 million falls under the original Treasury guidelines. So we have to spend at least $2.78 million under those conditions, and the projects highlighted in green are the ones that meet those requirements. To the left, the very left-hand column, you'll see a series of check marks. Those projects are fully committed. They're under contract, and we're moving forward. The next column, obviously, is the explanation. What is the project? Then the project amount, that is an estimated amount still, and what we originally estimated under HELP. The amount paid is the amount we've already spent and paid out. And then going over to the right, there's some notes there, and then finally the balance to complete the project. And the very last column is excess funds. So at this point, there's one project that we've completed, which was the Family Resource Center, that had $2,632 that was not spent on that project. So we will need to take that money, and there'll be others that will come in under the original estimate. And those dollars will have to be allocated to another project that is fully committed, again, in the next 4 months.
So which ones at the top are probably under-committed?
Well, the very first one, the emergency communications towers, we heard from Barry a couple of weeks ago, and my understanding is he's working on updating those numbers. And Barry, do you have a date when you're going to come back to us? Or
We have our first negotiation call with the two major vendors next Tuesday, where we'll begin to identify duplicate costs that we believe will reduce that 3.7 we talked about,
Okay.
and also pulling out some of the elements and subcontracting that.
Okay.
So I'm hoping by workshop or by this time next month, our next council meeting, to have that.
Okay, great. So,
So
you know,
all of
at
that
that time,
needs to be
as
funneled.
we're also, you heard from Steve, we're getting the initial plans for the landscape and hardscape of this complex next week. So that will start to gel a little bit on what that cost is going to be. We're working through the security issues and the upgraded locks and so on, so we'll have some numbers there. So, we will constantly now for the next 4 months be in that phase where we're making adjustments, we're raising numbers, we're lowering numbers, we're transferring money back and forth. So there's going to be a lot of the detail work that comes about. I expect you've heard about the Main Street Revitalization Program. The committee has identified the projects that scored the highest, and funding has been offered. They're going to meet with those property owners this week. We'll get some additional commitments, or there may be some people that say, I can't do it now. I don't have the resources for the match, so there may be shifting around of dollars there. Nothing will go above the $100,000 maximum, but if somebody says, hey, I can't do it now, those dollars could be shifted to the next highest scoring project and so on. So there's going to be a state of flux here for the next 4 months. Bear with us. We're dancing as fast as we can, and our goal obviously is to complete as many of these projects as we possibly can by the end of the year, but certainly to commit the funds, all of the funds, by the end of the year. And council and commissioners both have an integral role to play in making sure that happens. So we look forward to working with you as we go through that process. So the first page is the HELP projects. The second page is the non-HELP projects. And you can see, again, those highlighted in green go towards that $2.78 million that we talked about. And you see that from the check marks, most of these projects have already been to the commitment level. A couple that have not, the hardscape, landscape, and we're making progress there. The new cabling for data and voice for this complex. Craig Eason and Steve Higginbotham are working on getting out an RFP. We have vendors identified who will be asked to respond to that RFP, and we certainly believe that will be under contract by the end of the year. I do have the security issues we talked about, fairgrounds improvements we continue to look at, and again expect to have that ready to go by the end of the year. The same with the speed limit signs. The sheriff is working with us to identify the most important locations to have covered, and so we're moving forward with that. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. There are still a lot of dollars that need to be committed and spent, and we feel like we're on track to do that. But it's going to take everybody working together to make sure that happens.
Is IT working on the cabling for data and voice in the building?
They're not doing it yet. We're working on the request for proposals, and those will go out. We will not do that work ourselves. We will hire that out.
Okay.
And that 500,000 is the estimate of what it will cost. Again, until we actually get it under contract, that number could go down or up, more likely up in most cases.
Are the small towns not asking for the electronic speed signs? I mean, a lot of them have them already.
No, there are plenty of places, and including some that are not incorporated towns. So Williamsburg, for example, is a case in point. It's not incorporated, but there's a need there. So
Barry and I noted that they just say too fast a lot of times.
Only when I'm following Beth.
is
Yeah,
it just the two of you?
Just the
Okay.
two of us. No, it's funny to watch people because some people are like, I don't care about that thing. And other ones just immediately like bring it down. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Jeff, in the 24 I'm sorry, Beth.
you're fine.
In the 24 projects, some of these projects that have the check mark that have been completed, there's a balance to complete, dollar amount. Are there
So
any of that
completed-
that can be moved to excess fund?
Check mark is committed, not completed. So there's a contract, but it's not completed yet. We haven't necessarily paid out any money. So for example, the Bearcat is under contract. It was ordered,
Time to go.
what, 6 months ago, 8 months ago? Yeah. Early last spring, I think, but it's not been delivered, so it hasn't been paid for, and so that we can't move any money into the paid account.
What about courthouse exterior? That project's been completed. All the invoices paid. There's a,
That should be moved into the excess. I'm sorry.
that'll eventually happen. That's,
Okay.
It is excess, and because that project is done, it just didn't get moved into we just created this document in the last couple of days, and that'll be fixed.
So I have a question. If we commit these things and we've got everything committed and we have to do that by the end of this year,
Correct.
and then those projects don't get completed till next year and they come in under, what do we do with that money? Are we allowed to keep it?
No, we'll lose
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Lose it.
This kind of goes back to Steve's report here. But on the chamber technology, you said everything was pretty much done. I noticed the camera up here. And is this camera going to be used for WCTV?
That was a little before my time. I don't think that WCTV will use them, but remember that next year, by July of 2025, we have to be filming and making available every meeting that takes place in this room, and so it will probably become a part of our own video documentation of meetings. And some of them also in the back in particular, but I would assume this one here is set up for Zoom conference calls so that
Is there a special DVR and storage that we're gonna have to purchase for that?
there is, I understand it's already available, that we can already do that and store it.
Is it in
So-
somebody's budget?
I believe it's IT's budget.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as far as I know, that's all, I'll check on it, but
Okay.
as far as I know, that's all taken care of. It's all available.
Jeff, who will be handling any of those requests that come to the commissioner's office for the recordings?
I'm sorry?
Who will be responsible for handling any requests by the public for recording?
They'll be available on the website, so as those come in, Bobby will field those and direct them to how it can be accessed.
So are the cameras operational now?
I don't know. I'll find out and let you know.
Yeah,
They
I
must
think
be
Steve's
because-
Expect they are.
When Barry calls in,
Yeah,
he
Barry.
can see us.
Could you see the council when you
No.
called
Oh,
in?
you
And
couldn't see
I
us?
think that was part of the issue, and
Okay.
IT's not my specialty. My thought was that this was already controlling the screen, which prevented the camera from working.
And I don't know exactly, but we could see you. It's just that your picture was about that big.
It's my hair.
Well, I'll double check on those things and get back. Anything else?
have a quick question, just out of curiosity. I've been out past the highway department. Do you happen to know, are those fuel tanks like in the front of the building? Is that where these are that they're replacing? Kind of in the front, there's like big piles of,
Fuel tanks were in the front,
oh, okay.
and they were underground, and they've been removed, and now you see big fuel tanks off to the left of the building that are above ground. Those are the new tanks.
I just saw the dirt or whatever piles and I thought
The
that's.
dirt is where they had to remove the tanks and then test the soil and remove anything that was contaminated, and then that should be, is in the process of being
No
replaced.
longer be underground, the newest.
No longer be underground. So
Oh, okay.
there are dramatically different criteria for testing and maintaining underground tanks versus above-ground tanks. So this time we opted for above-ground tanks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If there's nothing else, thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you. That's a good list. All right, if there's nothing else for us, I think that concludes our council meeting. Our next regular meeting's October 2nd, and we will have the council commissioner workshop on September 18th, I think it says. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Hey Beth, one thing I just want to
You have
mention, for committee reports, we are having, WUR is having their tire event like we've had the last 3 years, October 26th from 9 to 12, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. So put that on your calendar if you have anyone
it
has
at?
tires. I'm sorry?
Where's it at?
So we are having it at 3 different locations. The out of the sanitary district, we're not doing it like last year at all those schools. We're doing the sanitary district, the
Transfer station.
the transfer station. Thank you, Barry. The transfer station in Union County and the transfer station in Wayne County, which is in Hagerstown. Those 3 locations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And what are you might tell the public what the requirements or what you're allowed to do or not do?
I believe, I don't have the notes with me, but I believe they can bring 8 like passenger sized tires, not on the rim, or smaller. That's fine, but we have a limit.
36-inch in height. So yardstick, anything taller than a yardstick won't be accepted.
And they need to show residency of Wayne County or Union County.
They are supposed to, yes.
All right, did we have a motion to adjourn?
I made it.
Did you make it? And do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none.